We all know that home is not always the calmest place in the world. Sometimes it feels more like a battlefield than a refuge. Amid demands, frustrations, accumulated wounds, and silence where there was once conversation, many fathers, mothers, and spouses feel like they are failing in their roles. But what if instead of seeing home as a war zone, we saw it as a true workshop of souls, a sacred space where we are shapers, apprentices, and teachers all at once, carving out, often with great effort and many stumbles, the essential virtues of Christian life. Saint Benedict, master of spiritual wisdom, left us a phrase that shines like a guiding light in this process. Never despair of God's mercy. When exhaustion hits, when our mistakes feel endless, it is this hope that holds us up. In his Rule of Life, one of the most inspiring documents in church history, Saint Benedict dedicates the 4th chapter to a list of what he calls instruments of good works. It's like a toolbox of spiritual virtues. The first tool is simple yet profound: to love God with all your heart. The last, echoing the first, urges us to trust completely in His mercy. That order is no coincidence. It's as if He's telling, start with love and end with trust, because the road between them will be full of human errors, but upheld by divine mercy. That is comforting for anyone who feels like they are never good enough, as a parent, as a wife, as a husband, or as a child. Knowing that failure isn't the end, but part of the formation process, is a balm for the weary soul. The closing line of this list is beautiful. These are the tools of the spiritual craft. For the monk, the workshop is the monastery. For us, it is our home. We share the same foundations and use similar tools: patience, listening, forgiveness, effort, and discipline. And just like any real workshop, there are those who teach and those who learn. But the truth is, at home, we are both. And here's a truth that must be clearly stated: forming others is not an easy task. Raising children requires self-giving. Saving a marriage demands humility. Keeping peace amidst differences takes wisdom. Yet, it is precisely in the act of shaping others that we ourselves are shaped by God. The teachings of Saint Benedict offer a true spiritual map for those leading within the home. In a time when many no longer know how to exercise authority without hurting others, or how to discipline without seeming too harsh, the centrality of mercy is like a compass pointing toward balance. We live in days when rigor scares and relativism weakens. That's why husbands, wives, parents, and mothers are often confused. How to educate, how to correct, how to be firm without losing tenderness. The answer lies precisely here. Always act in the light of mercy. Be just but also compassionate. Correct but never humiliate. Say no in a way that the other still feels loved. But do we live with daily trust in divine mercy? Or are we more inclined to think that God is disappointed in us? The truth is, many of us, even within the church, carry guilt that paralyzes us. There are parents who shout too much and then cry alone in the bathroom. Wives who pray for a love that has gone cold. Men battling addiction who feel ashamed of themselves. And here comes the wisdom of St. Thomas Aquinas, who taught that everything God does contains both justice and mercy. He explains that God gives what is right, but the very fact that we are owed anything is, in itself, an act of generosity. In other words, God owes us only because He lovingly chose to create us from nothing. That changes everything. What might seem like a distant concept becomes a practical direction for daily life. Thomas writes that, "In every work of God, seen at its root, mercy shines." This means that no matter how far we've wandered, or how many times we've failed, if we look back to the root of everything, we will find mercy. And that root is strong enough to hold up the tree even in the worst storms. This leads us to two indispensable attitudes in the home. The first is forgiveness. Forgiving those who hurt us, yes, but also forgiving ourselves. How many mothers fall asleep in tears after losing their patience? How many fathers carry the frustration of not being able to provide enough? Mercy also means recognizing that failing is part of the journey, and that God walks with us anyway. The second attitude flows from God's generous heart. Mercy as a free gift, not as a reaction, but as initiative. Loving without expecting anything. Return. Smiling when the other offers only silence. Serving even when exhaustion has taken over. And here comes a hard truth. In marriage, in parenting, and in friendship, we often give more than we receive. But if we do it out of love, not for recognition, we are imitating God Himself. Yes, marriage is a mutual surrender, and there is a debt of love between parents and children, and among true friends. But it is generosity, not emotional accounting, that sustains these bonds over time. The image of the Merciful Father, told by Jesus, is perhaps the most perfect portrayal of mercy. In action, while the Son walked away, the Father waited. While the world condemned Him, the Father prepared an embrace. And when He finally returned, there was no reproach, no humiliation, only celebration. What sustained that Father during the absence? Love. And it is this love that we must learn to cultivate, not just as a feeling, but as a daily decision. A decision to wait, to not give up, to continue loving even when the other doesn't respond. If we can do that, even in small steps, we will begin to resemble our Father in heaven. Because, as church doctrine teaches us, in everything that God accomplishes, mercy shines. And in everything that flows from it, mercy continues to operate with power. May this truth become our comfort and our mission. May we reflect divine mercy in our marriages, in the challenges of raising children, in the struggles within our families. And even when we stumble, may we keep using the most powerful tool God placed in our hands. Et de Dei misericordia, numquam desperare. Never lose hope in the mercy of God. This phrase may not change everything instantly, but it changes how we face everything day by day, and that is already a beginning. Amid the pressures of daily life, the silent frustrations and the expectations that often seem unreachable, many of us face the challenge of keeping the home standing. That place that should be a refuge, but so often becomes a stage for conflict, unresolved hurt and painful silence. But perhaps at the heart of it all, God is inviting us to see with new eyes, to realize that the home, with all its challenges, is also the sacred setting where He forges the saints of everyday life. Yes, it is there, between unwashed dishes and sleepless nights, between requests for forgiveness and silent embraces, that He shapes in us patience, generosity, compassion, and above all, mercy. And if there is one thing we learn from the saints, from Saint Benedict, from Saint Thomas Aquinas, and above all, from Christ Himself, it's that we are not alone in this mission. We were not made to walk this path alone. We need each other. We need community. A community where we are encouraged to keep going, even when everything seems to fall apart. Where we can learn together the art of loving, forgiving, and starting again. Where each family with its wounds and its hopes finds resonance and support in other families who are also striving for holiness. That's why I want to extend an invitation to you, an invitation to hope, an invitation to rebuilding, an invitation to live the faith not as a burden, but as a path that sets us free. If this video spoke to your heart, if at any moment you saw yourself in these words, if you recognized your own battles, subscribe to this channel. Because here every day we seek together to build that spiritual home that begins within the family, but expands into the community. Share this video with someone who needs a breath of mercy. Leave your comment, your story, your prayer request. And remember, et de Dei misericordia numquam desperare. Never lose hope in the mercy of God. This is not just a beautiful phrase. It is the secret of those who choose to carry on, even with a wounded heart. It is the beginning of a new life, in the place where everything begins, your family.